Good afternoon and welcome to a World Leaders Forum event co-sponsored with Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. Our guest today is Portuguese Prime Minister José Sócrates Carvalho de Sousa, but he is usually known by his given names of José Sócrates. He will be delivering an address entitled Energy Policy and the Portuguese Growth Agenda. Welcome, Mr. Prime Minister. Columbia University launched the World Leaders Forum in 2003 as a university-wide initiative to support uninhibited dialogue on the most pressing economic, political, environmental, and social questions of our time. Questions that with each passing year have larger and larger global dimensions. Over the past 7 years, the Forum has offered an opportunity for more than 15,000 students, faculty, and staff to directly engage important figures from 48 nations representing every corner of the world. Our experience has confirmed the animating principle of the World Leaders Forum, that only through informed dialogue, critical scholarship, and a free exchange of ideas will answers emerge to the biggest problems facing the world today. The role of universities in creating a space for uninhibited and critical discussion of controversial issues has been noted on many occasions. If anything, the changes we are seeing in public discourse serve to heighten the importance of this role. Universities are not only places where difficult conversations are respected and encouraged. Today, it sometimes appears that universities may be the only remaining venues where such conversations occur with regularity. We're now nearly through a week of World Leaders Forum events on our campus, which coincide with the fall meeting of the United Nations General Assembly. We have heard from a broad and diverse group of leaders from Africa, Europe, and Asia. They have challenged us with their views, and I think it is fair to say we have challenged them, thereby enriching our understanding of the world. Tomorrow, we will hear addresses from the presidents of Croatia and Turkey. The World Leaders Forum offers a unique opportunity to our students and faculty to engage in conversations with men and women directly involved in meeting the major challenges of the 21st century. An opportunity that would be difficult, if not impossible, to replicate in any other city or at any other university. We are grateful to the heads of state and other world leaders who continue to express a strong interest in coming here to speak. Prime Minister Sócrates was appointed Portugal's Minister of Environment in 1999. He also has served as Minister for Youth and Sport, during which time he was the chief organizer of the Euro World Cup, successfully hosted by Portugal in 2004. He became Prime Minister in 2005, and last year was elected to a second term. The problems facing Portugal as a result of the historic global financial and economic crisis are familiar and, in a word, daunting. The twin challenges of large national deficits and high rates of unemployment are providing a stern test for leaders throughout Europe and much of the world, and Portugal is no exception. In this difficult time, the Prime Minister has continued to pursue Portugal's ambitious program of developing alternative sources of energy, taking advantage of the nation's abundant access to sun, sea, and wind. The Prime Minister's sustainable energy program has invested over $18 billion, enlisting both public and private resources to meet its targets. The program's focus on technology and innovation includes substantial support for vocational training and education. The Portuguese government forecasts that by the close of this year, 45% of the nation's electricity consumption will be supplied by renewable sources, with the goal of producing 60% of its electricity from clean sources by the end of the decade. Should Portugal succeed in meeting this goal, the nation's reliance on alternative energy will be 3 times the target established by the European Commission for its member countries, and various orders of magnitude higher than anything dreamed of in this country, I might add. Clearly, energy policy is a topic of central significance at this university, and Prime Minister Socrates is clearly one of the best qualified world leaders to discuss it. Portugal's achievements, I should also mention, are well known at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia, where Manuel Pinho, who was the Minister of Economy and Innovation and who helped at the time these reforms were introduced and who helped implement Portugal's new energy strategy, is now serving as a very distinguished visiting professor this semester. Mr. Prime Minister, we are all extremely interested in hearing from you today. Please join me in welcoming Portuguese Prime Minister José Sócrates.
Mr. Dean, I want very much to express my thanks to your kind invitation to be with you this afternoon. And I want to tell you and all the professors and students here that it's an honor for me to be at Columbia University and to have the opportunity to address such a distinguished audience of students and professors of this university. I will follow the advice of my good friend, Mr. Manuel Pinho, that is present here. He advised me to express myself not in English, but in the international language we use to communicate, bad English. So, please watch out. I will speak in English. And if you allow me, I will go directly to the subject, energy. And the most important I have to tell you is this, is to describe to you the experience of my country on energy, and to describe to you one of the most important and structural reforms of our economy and of our society. And the point I want very much to underline in this short communication is this: it's possible to make structural reforms, important reforms, in several fields, but also on energy in a very short period of time. It's possible to do it. See the situation in Portugal. In 2005, Portugal was one of the countries that depends more on fossil energy. Portugal was one of the countries that depends more on the importation of oil. Portugal was one of the countries that has a huge problem in our trade balance, explained by the deficit of our energy. We import so much from abroad that it costs 50% of our deficit on our trade balance and more. Portugal was one of the countries that explored the less of our local resources on energy. For instance, Portugal was the European country that lacks exploit the hydric power potential of our country. This was the situation in 2005. In 2009, in 4 years, Portugal is nowadays the 5th country in the ranking of renewables in Europe and in the world. The 5th. Portugal is the 18th in the world ranking on environmental performance. As the Dean said, 45% of our electricity in 2009 was produced based on local renewable energy. 45%. In the first semester of this year, the first semester, 66% of our electricity was based on renewable energy. And for the first time, we export more electricity than we import. We had not a deficit that is traditional in our country, but a superávit on the trade of electricity for the first time. And with that conditions, we avoid the import of 100 million euros of fossil fuels. This is the situation nowadays. We have in Portugal the largest aeolic park, in operation in Europe. And we have the second highest level of incorporation of wind power in Europe. The second. The first is Denmark. The situation has changed very soon and in a large dimension. And if we saw the rankings, the economic rankings on innovation, on environmental, we saw the positions of Portugal had grown very quickly. And as you probably don't know, Portugal is nowadays one of the leader countries in terms of to create the conditions to have the electric car in our society. 2005, 2009. But those achievements of our country allow us to create now better and more ambitious targets for the future. Objectives to 2020. First of all, in 2020, we want to have 60% of our electricity produced from local renewable sources. 60%. We want to have more 20% increase in energy efficiency, and we want to reduce 20% in CO2 emissions. This is in line with the European strategy, yes, but we are in the leadership of Europe in terms of new targets, new investments, and new projects on energy. For instance, we are investing 3.7 billion euros, doubling the installed capacity on wind energy. Nowadays, I believe we have 4,000 megawatts of wind energy, and we intend to reach 8,000 in 2020. We have in Portugal the most important and the most ambitious project to have more contribution of hydric power to our production of electricity. Until 2020, we will move from 344 megawatts to 574 megawatts. We have projects in all the renewables, not only on wind energy, not only in hydric energy, but also in solar energy and also in wave energy. And we are supporting all the investments in those areas. In those areas, every year, some companies appear. We are increasing jobs and activity, economic activity. And only to give you some figures, it's very important you to know that nowadays we have a very efficient and modern cluster of renewables in our country. More than 20,000 people in Portugal has a job in a company that is working on renewable energy. It shows very clear that our bet on renewables is not only a question of independence of a country, is not only a question to reduce CO2 emissions, is not a question to be on the right side against the climate change. It's also about economy and to create jobs. And this is real, the mix that we operate to create a huge transformation in our economy and in our society. And I want to be very clear to you. I consider the field of energy, the transformation we made on energy, the most important and structural transformation in our economy. It's not only the image of our country. It's not only to have good positions in several environmental rankings. It's also the presence we have in one of the fields that in the modern economy will receive the better in innovation and the better in research and development. Of course, unfortunately, there are not a technical proposition, a proposal, a scientific proposal to assure the road of growing for the countries. We know that. Unfortunately, there are not a receipt, you understand what I meant, a proposal, a scientific proposal that politicians can follow in order to achieve growth. But I'm very well convinced that on energy is one of the fields, one of the driving forces of the new economy of this century. So, what can I tell you about the secrets of success? What can I tell you? What were the conditions to succeed in the transformation, in the change in this field? I will tell you three things about that. First, it's necessary to have a strategy. When I studied on my MBA, I had a discipline called enterprise strategy or something like that. And I remember the first phrase, the first statement of the manual. It goes like this: strategy is about winning. It sounds me always like a verse. Strategy is about winning. And I can assure all of you there will be no success without strategy. And the secret for this transformation we made in our country in only 4 years was, first of all, to have a clear strategy. And a clear strategy that we can explain to everyone in our society. Because this strategy to bet on renewables is something that we can explain to my country very clearly. First of all, it's very important to reduce our dependence of oil. The second, it's the best way to contribute to a better environment. Third, it's very important that Portugal joined the nations that are making efforts to create a better economy, a greener economy, a low-carbon economy. And finally, these transformations create jobs, new opportunities for business. Those were the reasons that create a very good social environment to support our national strategy. So, first of all, we succeed because we had a strategy. But second, it's not only a question of strategy. It's a question of enforcement strategy. It's not only the conception of strategy. One part is the conception, but the other part, and I can tell you, the hard part of this is to put strategy on the ground. It's not only the conception of the whole thing, it's the execution. And if I can tell you something about this for the future in my country, we will need 5% of conception, be attention to the changes that are going on in this field around the world, but all we need more is to exercise, to put things on the ground, to make it happen, not only to create, to conceive, but make it happen. And believe me, this is not easy. Probably is the most difficult part of the story. And finally, the third point of the success is not a plan for the state, is not a plan for public policies. No. It should be a plan to involve all the society and all the businessmen and good companies, and to mobilize them to create a movement. In Spanish, it can be said that to create a movida. I know the Spanish is the second language in the United States, and I know all of you understand this concept of movida, dynamism, movement, in order to achieve the goals we want to achieve. So, this is really a huge transformation. But let me finalize my initial presentation, and I will be very glad to answer your questions and to make some dialogue with you, to underline one of our most important projects in Portugal. It's not only the wind energy, it's not only the hydric energy, it's not the investment we are making on solar, it's not only the wave energy we are developing. We are the first country in the world developing the first technology to base the production of energy on waves, but is this project, I think, will be a reality very soon. The electric car, the electric mobile not only cars, but bus, bicycles, the electric car, I think it will be one of the most important and most promising changes in the area of energy. In Portugal, we are one of the key countries in the world that are creating now the first national grid to, what's the name in English? To recharge the batteries on cars. Renault Nissan, the most important car constructors, it's not American, but I think they have some business also in America, decided to build the first fabric, the first plant on batteries in Portugal. And he decided that because they recognized the efforts of the government and the business companies that are with great attention on this business to develop the new car of the future, the electric car. Well, I understand you look at me with some suspicions about that electric car. It will be a success or not. Let me tell you one story. I remember one day I was member of parliament in the 80s. I was very young, but I was the spokesman of my party for the questions of environment. And I remember the first time we received a delegation from Denmark. And they made the presentation of the most important bet the country made on wind energy. You cannot imagine the cynicism and the laughs I saw in the face and smiles in the face of so many people that don't believe that that kind of energy, the wind energy, could be competitive because the prices, because this and that. Nowadays, after 10 years of efforts, Denmark is the leading country on wind energy. And they are selling everywhere their technology. And they are selling now for the United States. And they have the first company in the world on wind energy technology. We are on that track. Fortunately, we have not the first, but the third most, the largest company on renewables in the world. But believe me, the electric car will change the atmosphere and the landscape of our cities. For a moment, imagine the following. Imagine a city with cars that has two features. First, no emissions. Second, no noise. No noise, no emissions. Do you think the citizens, if we will have 10% of the cars in one city without emissions and without noise, they will want to be back? I don't believe. I think the electric car is one of the most important transformations that the beginning of the new century will bring to us and to our society. So, the field of energy is a field very full of promises for the future. One of the leading fields of transformation of our economy. And not only economy, but also in the environment. And it's also a field of business full of opportunities. And I think that's why I have so many young people here. Believe me, this field will give you great opportunities for your future. Thank you very much.
So, Prime Minister Socrates has graciously agreed to answer some questions. If you would like to ask them, please move towards the microphones and form a line there. Before you ask, I will be calling on you. Before you ask your question, I would ask you to please state your name and your school at Columbia, so we can get started with you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Pullman. I go to the School of General Studies. One thing that's very important is, first of all, there's some differences between Portugal and the United States. First of all, it's the size. Second of all, it's the different landscapes. The United States is much broader. But my question really is, just keep that in mind as I ask my question. My question is, the United States has spent hundreds of billions of dollars on bailouts and economic stimulus plans. Do you think they should have used some of that money for the things you're talking about? But more specifically, how do you think they should have specifically used that money? If they should have used some of that money for renewable energy, how could they have used that? Not just in research and so forth, but a little more specific than that.
First of all the countries all the states, the public administrations that want to give an impulse to their economies don't find a better field to invest than energy. There are so much things to do on energy, new developments on energy, that if you want to create jobs, give opportunities of business, and create a better environment, you will find on energy a very, very good field to invest. So, all the countries are doing their best in order to put public money and private money to follow the new tendencies on energy. It will be a huge competition. But I noticed that your president, in the first speeches he made it clear that the field of energy will be one of the fields that the American administration will invest more in order to develop the sector, in order to create new opportunities, new jobs, but also in order to follow the new path of the United States to reduce the CO2 emissions. And I think the new administration of your country is compromised with the new objectives of the negotiations we made after the Kyoto Protocol. But to be honest with you, the need creates the opportunity to make new strategies. Portugal has more needs than the United States in the area of energy, because we depend more from oil than the United States. We don't produce oil, neither gas, and we have a huge trade deficit on our trade balance created by the energy. That's why we felt the need to create a new strategy and to exploit our local resources, and that's why the new strategy on energy came out.
Thank you.
Speech, and I'm happy that you are making such developments in a very important field. My question involves something that is indirectly related to your country's effort and the field of energy. After hearing President Obama and Ahmadinejad speak at the UN, I wanted to see your ideas on the United States and Iran relations, and what is the foreign policy that Portugal has in respect to Iran.
I think we have the same policy, Portugal and the United States. the respect of international law. And I think this is the challenge for all the governments and for all the administrations, to make the international policy based on the international rules and laws. This is most important. And the most, in these times, in New York, with the General Assembly of the United Nations going on, is the moment to underline this principle, the respect of international law.
I would please remind you to state your name and school.
Please.
Ziad Namani, Columbia Business School. Two questions, they are related to each other. The first question is, did you face any reactions from oil companies, traditional fossil fuel companies in Portugal, while you were implementing those changes? And the second question is, was the oil or the energy problem the biggest impediment for the improvement of the economy in Portugal, or there were bigger challenges? And if there were bigger challenges, what are those challenges? Thank you.
Listen, if you ask me what are the fields, the most important fields of investment and transformation in the Portuguese economy, I will tell you that in 3 or 4 words: energy, new technology on information and communication technology. We are making a great effort on that. By the way, I don't know if all of you are familiar with that, but Portugal is the leading country in the ranking of e-government in Europe. I will tell you it again. Portugal is the leading country on the ranking of the e-government. It's something. 4 years ago, we were at the 18th place. Now we are the leading country. So we have a challenge on telecommunications and information and communications technology, and the area of science and education. If you ask me, tell me the 3 most important areas of the development that Portugal should face: energy, development, information and communication technologies, and higher education, science. These were the 3 areas. Your first question, I'm sorry, I
was asking, did you face any reactions?
The reactions. It's very interesting. No. No, I didn't, because for a very understandable reason, we don't have oil in Portugal. So we have companies, but on the fields of refining oil and not to exploit oil. But some of them have some doubts on this, but I think now they are involved in these huge transformations. The oil companies in Portugal, the major one, is involved on the projects on electric cars, is involved on wind energy, and they took the opportunity to diversify their business. The case is very different in a country that has oil like the United States. But in general, I can tell you that the reaction of the business community was very good in the direction to take opportunities in the field of energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question from the left.
Varun from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My question to you is that besides the tremendous change in the energy policy of Portugal and the e-governance, what do you consider to be the single biggest achievement of your tenure as the Prime Minister of Portugal?
I'm sorry, I didn't. What is the?
What do you consider to be your single biggest achievement as the Prime Minister of Portugal, besides the energy policy?
I'm a modest man. So I will not take half an hour to describe all my achievements. But I can tell you this. One of the huge I'm a socialist. Well, here in the United States, I think you call liberal to the social democrats in Europe. But we made a very tough and very ambitious transformation in our social security. We made 4 reforms in only 2 years, in 2005 and 2006. First of all the public servants in Portugal goes to retirement with 60 years old, not anymore. Now they go to retirement as the same age of the private employees, 65. This is the first change. The second, we achieve a transformation in order to consider all the contribution career of the people and not the best 10 years of the last 15, that is the European crazy conditions to the calcul of the pension. And the third, we make a new introduction in social security on the calcul of pensions. We affect the calcul with the sustainability factor that compares the life expectancy in 1 January of 2006 with life expectancy in the moment you retired. So, for the first time, we introduce more fairness in the calcul of the pension, because the state only have the money to pay some years. If the years goes longer with more life expectancy, the state only have 2 possibilities to give to the citizen: or you work more, or you win less in the old years. So it was one of the huge and most profound reforms in Europe that has been done during the beginning of this century. But I want to tell you this: with this reform, we create conditions to have a public social security. And we want that social security public. We don't want it private. It's a European perspective.
Thank you. One more
Thank
question.
you for your question.
Good evening, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Max Drews. I'm a freshman at Columbia College. My question has to do with Portugal's drug policy. In 2001, Portugal became the first European country to abolish all criminal penalties for personal drug possession. What is your stance on this issue, and what do countries like America, Mexico, and Brazil need to learn about drug policy?
It is not exactly like that. Because, you know, I was in charge in the moment we made this transformation. I was the minister in charge. When I was Minister of Sports and Youth, I had the responsibility on drugs policy. And I made that reform. And that reform was the following. We accept 2 modifications. First of all, we insist in the line to protect risks. I don't know the expression in English to tell this, but the idea is to use all the instruments, is to accept that the drug exists, and to use all the instruments to reduce the harm to the society. And all the new programs of methadone, what's the English expression for syringes? Needles, distribution of needles, all those projects result of that strategy. But in terms of consumption, we decided the following. It's not exactly as I said, but I explained to all of you. We decided in an intelligent movement because my country, like yours, is part of the United Nations. And the United Nations has resolution, has common policies on that, and we cannot put us a part of the international conventions on drugs. But we decided not to consider the consumption of drugs like a crime. We decided it's forbidden, but it's not a crime. It's something like you pay a fine, like the traffic violations of the rules. I don't know the exact expression in English to separate the penal situations from in my country we used to call it the contra-national policy. It's something that you can, you don't go to prison, but you pay a fine. It's better to deal with the consumers of drugs. And the most important to tell you is this. The transformations we made in terms of drug policy was this. We changed from an ideological policy for a pragmatic policy to support us in results, to better results. And it works. We are very happy with those changes. Thank you to you also.
One more question from the left.
I'd like to know if I could ask it in Portuguese by any chance.
Of course.
The audience is English, so they won't be able to understand. So I'd prefer if you do it in English.
Okay.
But if,
my name is Marco Machado. I'm a student at Columbia College. Em primeiro lugar, bem-vindo cá, Sr. Primeiro-Ministro.
Obrigado também, é muito simpático.
You had mentioned before in your speech that a strategy is necessary to combat the energy crisis that we're facing, and that strategy needs to be compiled together not only with politicians but with scientists and professionals, like many of the students here that have gone to universities and that know how to create systems where you can form renewable energies. At the same time, last week when you were in the University of Madeira, you made something of a pledge that by the year 2020, you wanted 40% of the population that's between the ages of 30 and 34 years old to have university degrees, even though that number at present is well below that 40%. My question primarily is, how exactly do you wish to attain that 40%, seeing as how many of the professionals and many of the other people in Portugal that obtain university degrees end up leaving the country, whether for better working conditions or better salaries? Do you plan on forming some sort of incentive where, okay, if you go for some sort of degree that helps you form companies with renewable energy sources or create some sort of strategic plan in working with the government, you get some sort of incentive, so maybe it's cheaper or something like that? I'd like to know what your idea is.
No, I have no intention on that because I don't think it's necessary. And I want to give you some figures, some more figures. First of all, you are completely right. The objective of Portugal is in 2020 to have 40% of the people with 20 years old studying in the university. This is our objective. But nowadays, no, sorry, is not like that. We want to have 40% from the people, the people from 25 to 34 with academic university degree. But nowadays, in this present moment, 36% of the Portuguese with 20 years old are studying in the university. And I can assure you this. When I was at university, only 3% of the people with 20 years were at university. And it was one of the most impressive modifications in our country, the higher education on university. And I don't know if you are aware with this, but let me, if you allow me, make some propaganda of my government. We have in our universities, since the last years, convenios, contracts, protocols with American universities. Not, unfortunately, with Columbia University, but with the MIT, Austin University, and Carnegie Mellon University, and also with the Harvard University. We have nowadays very open universities. And I want to share with you this little story. 2 months ago, the dean of our largest university, the University of Porto, was elected. And you know something? They had 2 candidates. One, Portuguese, and the other was an American. For the first time, the Portuguese universities allow any professor in the world, from China, United States, Vietnam, you name it, if he has the conditions to do it, to be a dean of university in Portugal. This was one of the reforms I'm proud of. But the achievement is very easy. It's only to continue the work that we have been done during these years in terms to insist on education and on higher education. But let me tell you the following figure. We have the idea in Portugal, only in Portugal, that the brilliant brains of our country go abroad. It's not true. Some goes, and we are proud of them. We are proud of the Portuguese that comes to America, that make their professional and academic lives here or in the other countries of Europe. And they are doing their job to give prestige to our country. But in this present moment, I want you to know that we have 7.2 scientists for each 1,000 Portuguese working. And this is a figure that is higher than the European average. 7.2 scientists for each 1,000 Portuguese working. So, we have Portuguese abroad? Yes, we have, and we are proud of them. But we have so many people from outside, from America, from Germany, from Spain, everywhere comes to Portugal. And believe me, Portugal is a very good country to make science.
Muito obrigado.
Obrigado também pela sua pergunta.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. I am also Portuguese.
State your name and school.
Manuel Lopes Carvalho. I'm an MBA student here at Columbia. My question relates a bit to what you were saying just now. Is what do you think are Portugal's main arguments for us that study here and all the Portuguese people that study abroad to go back to Portugal and resume their professional lives in Portugal?
I think Portugal, unlike the other European countries, is a country of opportunities. One thing that you probably know, Portugal is one of the countries where to be educated pay more. The difference between the salary of the educated people and not no educated people, the difference is bigger in our country. That's why I insist so much that one of our most important challenge is the qualifications of our people. And I'm very proud you are here in Colombia. You know, I spend all my life thinking when my opportunity to live and study abroad comes. Unfortunately, it didn't come. I had not the opportunity. But after to be Prime Minister, who knows? It's so interesting to come to this university to see a campus, a university campus in America. When I came, my head of cabinet told me, well, it's so beautiful this that it creates the impression that our most important will is to stay here for the last 2 years studying and thinking and not action, but reflection. All the politicians are men of action, but sometimes I need also to reflect and to study. Enjoy the opportunity to be in American University, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, and you should know that we would always be happy to welcome you. As you see, there's a lot of interest on the country. I know that you're running to an event. Do you want to have we'd give you the last word for the next 3 minutes.
No,
unless you want to take another question, it's up to you. Okay.
One question and...
We'll take a last question then from that
well, thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Tim Weber, and I am a first year at the School of Engineering and Applied Science. I really appreciate your and your country's commitment to renewable resources. Now, my question is regarding the infrastructure of those electrical resources. With the intermittent nature of such resources such as wind power and solar power, what sort of changes did your country need to make in order to handle those new powers in their infrastructure? And do you think such changes could be applied here in the United States, where electrical infrastructure is owned by so many different companies?
I have no doubt that the United States has a challenge, like all the other industrialized countries, to make the modifications our economy needs in terms to be compatible with the objectives on environment. And we have so much to do, but when we are living in the times like these, in times of crisis, I think we should look at the work that should be done in order to compensate the impacts on environment of our economy, that we should look at that problems as opportunities to do something, to create new jobs and new opportunities. And believe me, in my experience, when we can explain a clear strategy, when we can explain to our citizens and to our businessmen a clear strategy, and after 4 years with results, it's very easy to convince society to follow the path of transformation. In the beginning, I didn't say that to the student that made the question. Of course, in all societies are some people that defend others' possibilities. We have in my country some people that defend the investment on nuclear plants. I never defended that for several reasons, but there are pragmatic reasons also. If one country decided in Europe to create a nuclear plant, the time that is necessary from the moment you decided, from the moment that the nuclear plant is on operation, is almost 20 years. We cannot wait 20 years. We should have a strategy for those 20 years and not for the second part of the century. And that's why I think that we have the way ahead very clear in front of us, is the bet on renewables. Renewables is the answer to jobs, to economy, to energy, and also to the environment. And if you allow me, Professor, I want to once again to thank you all for the kindness of this reception. Once again, I'm very proud and honored to be in such a distinguished university. And I want you to know that for me it was a very good opportunity to present the experience of my country. I had fewer experiences to address to American students, but I should tell you this. Manuel Pinho knows that I considered September the best part of the life of a prime minister, European prime minister, because it's the moment you should go to the United States to make a speech and spend 2 days in New York in September. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.